Isabella Martinez worked the night shift at the diner on the corner of 5th Street, where the neon lights flickered and cast shadows across cracked vinyl booths. She poured coffee for truckers, cleaned tables sticky with syrup, and counted her tips, hoping they'd cover next month's rent. Nobody noticed her there, just another face behind the counter in a faded uniform. The bell above the door chimed at exactly 2:47 a.m. when everything changed. 3 men walked in, their expensive suits out of place among the fluorescent lights and chipped formica tables. The one in the middle moved differently from the others, like a predator aware of his surroundings but unconcerned by them. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in a museum, all sharp angles and dangerous beauty. This was Luca Benedetti, though Isabella didn't know his name yet. She grabbed the coffee pot and approached their booth, keeping her eyes down the way she always did. The men were discussing something in low voices, switching between English and Italian. Isabella understood both languages perfectly, a skill inherited from her grandmother, but she'd learned long ago that knowing too much could be dangerous. "Just coffee," the dark-haired man said without looking at her. His voice rolled over the words like expensive whiskey, smooth with an edge that could cut. Isabella poured 3 cups, her hands steady despite the tension radiating from the table. As she turned to leave, one of the men grabbed her wrist, not the leader, but the one sitting across from him, younger and trying too hard to prove himself. "Pretty little thing," he said, his grip tightening. "Maybe you should sit with us." Before Isabella could respond, before she could even think about pulling away, the leader's hand shot across the table. He gripped his associate's wrist with enough force to make the younger man wince. "Release her," Luca said quietly. The temperature in the diner seemed to drop 10 degrees. Now, the grip on Isabella's wrist vanished. She stepped back, still clutching the coffee pot, and for the first time, she looked directly at the man who'd defended her. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. His were the color of bitter chocolate, and something flickered in them, gone before she could identify it. "Thank you," she whispered, then fled to the safety behind the counter. For the next hour, she busied herself with meaningless tasks, wiping down surfaces that were already clean, organizing sugar packets that didn't need organizing. The men continued their discussion, and despite her best efforts not to listen, fragments drifted over. Territory disputes, missing shipments, names of people who had disappeared. When they finally left, Luca placed a $100 bill on the table for 3 cups of coffee. Isabella stared at it after they were gone, knowing she should leave it there, knowing that taking it would mean something. But rent was due, and her electricity had been shut off twice this year. She pocketed the money and tried to forget the way he'd looked at her. The next night, they returned. Same time, same booth. This time, Luca's eyes found her the moment he walked through the door. Isabella's heart did something complicated in her chest. Part fear, part something else she refused to name. "The usual?" she asked, proud that her voice remained steady. "You remember," Luca said, and this time he was looking at her when he spoke. "Most people prefer to forget they've seen us." "I'm not most people," Isabella replied, then immediately regretted it. Drawing attention to herself around men like this was foolish, but instead of anger, something like amusement crossed Luca's features. "No," he agreed. "I don't believe you are." This became their routine. Every few nights, sometimes alone, sometimes with his men, Luca would appear at 2:47 a.m. He always sat in the same booth, always ordered just coffee, always left a $100 bill, and each time, their interactions grew a fraction longer, a degree warmer. Isabella learned to recognize his moods by the set of his shoulders, the way he held his coffee cup. On bad nights, when the weight of whatever empire he controlled pressed down on him, he'd stare out the window at the empty street. On those nights, she'd slip an extra sugar into his coffee without being asked, and he'd drink it without comment. "You're not afraid of me," he said one night when he came alone. It wasn't a question. Isabella considered lying, then decided against it. "I am," she admitted, "but I'm afraid of a lot of things." Afraid doesn't mean stupid. And what do you think would be stupid? Pretending you're something you're not. Pretending you don't do terrible things. His jaw tightened. You don't know what I do. I speak Italian, she said simply. And I'm not deaf. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Then Luca laughed. A sound rusty from disuse. You're full of surprises. Isabella Martinez. It was the first time he'd used her name. She hadn't told it to him. You had me investigated, she said, not really surprised. I investigate everyone who interests me. And I interest you? More than you should. The words hung in the air like a confession. Isabella's hands trembled as she refilled his cup. She knew she was standing at the edge of something dangerous. Something that would swallow her whole if she let it. But hadn't her whole life been about surviving? About being invisible? Overlooked? Ignored? I get off shift at 6, she heard herself say. Luca's eyes darkened. I know. Just coffee, she added quickly. Somewhere with actual food. I own a restaurant on the north side. Benedetti's. Of course he did. The most exclusive Italian restaurant in the city, where reservations were made months in advance, and prices weren't listed on the menu. I can't afford to eat there. You're not paying, he said simply. Then softer, let me show you my world, Isabella. Just once. She should have said no. Every rational part of her screamed to refuse. To keep her head down and her life simple. But rationality had never gotten her anywhere except this diner. Pouring coffee for strangers at 3 in the morning. Just coffee, she repeated. Just coffee, he agreed. But they both knew it was a lie. When her shift ended and she stepped out into the gray dawn light, a black town car was waiting. The driver held the door open, without a word. Isabella looked back at the diner. At her old life. Then slid into leather seats that probably cost more than she made in a year. The city looked different from behind tinted windows. Softer somehow, like a movie she was watching instead of a life she was living. Luca sat beside her, not touching. But his presence filled the space between them with unspoken possibilities. You can still change your mind, he offered as they pulled up to the restaurant. I know, Isabella said. That's what makes this my choice. Something shifted in his expression then, a crack in the marble facade. For just a moment, she saw past the Mafia boss to the man underneath. And what she saw there made her breath catch. He was just as trapped as she was, just in a different kind of cage. The restaurant was closed to the public. Its dining room empty except for their table by the window. Sunlight streamed through glass, painting everything golden. Isabella had never eaten anywhere this elegant, where the tablecloths were crisp white linen and the silverware felt heavy in her hands. Luca watched her take it all in, his expression unreadable. You're not eating, he observed. I'm not hungry, Isabella admitted. This doesn't feel real. What would make it feel real? She thought about it, then smiled. Pancakes. Bad coffee. Maybe a jukebox playing oldies too loud. He signaled to someone she couldn't see, and within minutes, a plate of pancakes appeared, along with a pot of coffee that smelled deliberately burnt. From somewhere in the kitchen, the voice of Frank Sinatra drifted out. How did you? I asked them to make what you wanted, Luca said simply. My people are good at following orders. The word orders reminded her who she was sitting with. Isabella cut into the pancakes, forcing herself to eat, despite the butterflies in her stomach. Tell me about your family, she said. His hand stilled on his coffee cup. That's not a safe topic. Nothing about you is safe. True. He leaned back, studying her. My father built this empire. I inherited it when he died 5 years ago. My mother passed when I was 12. No siblings, no one close enough to be used against me. He paused. Until now, the implication hit her like cold water. I'm not. We're not. I know what we're not, Luca interrupted. But I also know what you're becoming to me. And that terrifies me more than any enemy I've faced. Isabella set down her fork. Then why am I here? Because for the first time in 5 years, I want something for myself. Not for the family, not for business. Just for me. His eyes were intense on hers. You see me, Isabella, not the boss, not the Benedetti name. Just the man who drinks too much coffee at 3 in the morning. I see the boss too, she said quietly. I heard what happened to the Romano family last week. 3 bodies in the river. His face hardened. They sold drugs to children. In my territory. There are rules. And you enforce them. Someone has to. They sat in silence, the weight of his world settling between them like a third presence at the table. Isabella knew she should leave, should run as far and fast as she could. Instead, she reached across the table and touched his hand. I'm not going to pretend you're a good man, she said. But I don't think you're entirely lost either. His hand turned under hers, fingers interlacing. You could be wrong. I could be. That became the pattern of their strange courtship. Coffee at the diner when he needed normalcy. Breakfast at his restaurant when the world could wait. Isabella kept her apartment, kept her job, kept one foot in her old life even as the new one pulled her deeper. She learned the rhythm of his days. Early morning meetings with his lieutenants. Afternoons handling legitimate business interests. Evenings dealing with problems that required darker solutions. He never spoke of specifics. But she could read the violence in the tension of his shoulders. The blood in the careful way he sometimes moved. You could have anything, she told him one morning. Anyone. Supermodels. Actresses. Society women. Who understand your world. I've had them, he said bluntly. Empty faces. Empty conversations. They see the money. The power. You see the cost. 3 months into their relationship, everything changed. Isabella was walking home from the grocery store when a car pulled alongside her. Before she could react, hands grabbed her, pulled her inside. A cloth pressed against her face, and the world went dark. She woke in a warehouse, wrists zip-tied to a chair. 3 men stood around her, and she recognized one from the diner. The young one who'd grabbed her wrist that first night. Finally awake, he said. Good. We need you conscious for the video. What do you want? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. It's not about what we want. It's about what Benedetti will give us to get you back. Territory. Money. Maybe even stepping down. He leaned close enough that she could smell garlic on his breath. You're his weakness. His soft spot. We've been watching for months, waiting for him to care about someone. You're making a mistake, Isabella said. The man backhanded her, splitting her lip. The only mistake was Luca, thinking he could have a normal life. A normal woman. He pulled out a phone. Smile for the camera. They sent the video. Then they waited. Luca didn't negotiate. He didn't send representatives. He came himself, walking through the warehouse doors like death personified. Isabella had seen him dangerous before. But this was different. This was apocalyptic rage, contained in human form. Let her go, he said, his voice so calm it raised goosebumps on her arms. And I'll make your deaths quick. The leader laughed, pressing a gun to Isabella's temple. You're outnumbered, Benedetti. And outgunned. Step down, or watch her die. You already signed your death warrant when you touched her, Luca said. The question is whether you die tonight, or whether I hunt down everyone you've ever loved first. You're bluffing. Luca smiled then. And it was the most terrifying thing Isabella had ever seen. Antonio. Your mother lives at 427 Maple Street. She waters her roses every morning at 6. Your sister Maria just started nursing school. Your nephew turned 3 last week. The gun against her temple shook. You wouldn't. I've done worse for less. But I'll give you one chance. Release her. Run. Keep running, and never stop, because the moment you slow down, the second you think you're safe, I'll be there. And if we kill her now, then I'll make you wish I'd only killed your family. The silence stretched taut. Isabella could hear her heartbeat. Could feel the fear radiating from her captors. They'd thought they were predators. They'd just discovered they were prey. Boss, one of the other men whispered. Maybe we should... Shut up. Antonio snapped. But his voice cracked. The gun moved away from Isabella's head as he gestured. We have him outnumbered. Count again, Luca said softly. Red dots appeared on all three men's foreheads. Laser sights from rifles they couldn't see. Antonio's face went white. "Last chance," Luca said. "Run or die. Choose quickly." "My patience died the moment you took her." Antonio's hand moved toward the zip ties binding Isabella. "If we let her go, you have 30 seconds to disappear." 29. 28. They ran, stumbling over each other in their haste to escape, leaving Isabella still tied to the chair. Luca was beside her in an instant, cutting the ties with gentle hands that trembled slightly. "Are you hurt?" His fingers ghosted over her split lip. "Did they? Just the slap," she assured him. "Luca, your hands are shaking. I thought I'd lost you." The words came out raw, stripped of his usual control. "When I saw that video, when I saw him hit you, I wanted to burn the world down. But you didn't. You gave them a chance to run. Only because you were watching," he admitted. "Only because I didn't want you to see what I really am." Isabella touched his face, feeling the stubble under her palm. "I already know what you are. And you're still here. I'm still here." He kissed her then, desperate and possessive and relieved all at once. When they broke apart, she saw something new in his eyes. Something that looked like hope and terror mixed together. "This can't happen again," he said. "I need to keep you safe. Bien well. Quote, by pushing me away, by keeping you close, move in with me, let me protect you." Isabella thought of her small apartment, her simple life. It had been safe but empty, invisible but alone. "That's a big step. Too big?" She looked at him. This dangerous man, who commanded an empire but looked at her like she was his whole world. "Ask me again," she said. "Without the fear. Without what just happened. Ask me because you want me there, not because you're scared." He took a breath, centered himself. When he spoke again, his voice was steady. "Isabella Martinez, I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want to show you my world. All of it. The good and the bad. Move in with me because I'm falling in love with you and I can't imagine my life without you in it." "That's better," she whispered. "Yes." His arms came around her, holding her like she might disappear. "You're going to drive me insane," he murmured, against her hair. "Probably," she agreed. "But you were heading there anyway." He laughed, and she felt it rumble through his chest. "My men are going to think I've lost my mind." "Have you?" "Completely." He pulled back to look at her. "And I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Living with Luca was like learning to breathe underwater. Everything in his penthouse spoke of power and control. From the bulletproof windows to the guards who nodded respectfully when she passed. Isabella kept her waitress uniform in the closet next to designer dresses she hadn't asked for, a reminder of who she'd been before. "You don't have to keep working," Luca told her one evening, as she prepared for her shift. "Yes, I do," she replied, pinning her name tag in place. "I need something. That's mine." He watched her with those dark eyes that saw too much. "The diner isn't safe. Nowhere is safe," she countered. "Your world taught me that." She was right, but not in the way either of them expected. The danger didn't come from rival families or territorial disputes. It came from within. Vincent Benedetti arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while Luca was handling business downtown. Isabella answered the door to find an older version of Luca standing there. Same dark hair silvered at the temples, same dangerous beauty weathered by age. "So you're the woman who has my nephew tied in knots," Vincent said, inviting himself in. "I had to see for myself." "Forded. He's mentioned you," Isabella said carefully. Vincent was Luca's uncle. The one who'd wanted to take over when Luca's father died. The one who still believed he should be running the family. "Has he? All good things, I'm sure." Vincent's smile was sharp as glass. "Tell me, Isabella, what does a diner waitress want with the head of the Benedetti family?" "Nothing," she said honestly. "I wanted the man who drinks too much coffee. The rest came with him." Vincent circled her like a predator sizing up prey. You're prettier than I expected. Smarter too. But you're not equipped for this life. Maybe not. But I'm learning. Learning. He laughed, the sound cold. Let me teach you something, girl. Love is a luxury men like Luca can't afford. You make him weak. Distracted. His enemies see it. His allies see it. Even his own family sees it. And you think he'd be better off without me. I know he would. The boy I trained would never have let those men who took you live. He's going soft. And soft men don't survive in our world. Isabella met his gaze steadily. The man you trained sounds like a monster. Monsters live. Good men get buried. Vincent moved closer, voice dropping. Leave him. I'll make it worth your while. Enough money to start over anywhere you want. Enough to never pour coffee again. No. Think carefully. This isn't a world where love stories have happy endings. Then we'll write a different kind of story. Vincent studied her for a long moment. You're going to get him killed. Or I'll give him something worth living for. She didn't tell Luca about the visit. But he knew anyway. He always knew. That night, he held her tighter than usual. His face buried in her hair. Vincent came to see you. He's worried about you, Isabella said. He's worried about the family, about power. He never understood that there's more to life than surviving. Is there? In your world? Luca was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. There wasn't. Then you walked into it with your terrible coffee and your fearless eyes, and suddenly I wanted more than just the next day. I'm not fearless, she whispered. I'm terrified every time you leave. Then we're even. I'm terrified every time I come home that you'll be gone. But Isabella didn't leave. Instead, she adapted. She learned to recognize the subtle shift in the guards' postures that meant trouble was coming. She learned which of Luca's associates could be trusted and which smiled while sharpening knives. She learned to navigate dinner parties where everyone wore designer clothes and discussed murder between courses. You're changing, her friend Maria told her one afternoon. They'd met for coffee at their old hangout. A world away from Luca's territory. Everything changes, Isabella replied. No, this is different. You walk different, talk different. There's something in your eyes that wasn't there before. Knowledge, Isabella said simply. I know things now. About how the world really works. About power and fear. And the prices people pay for both. Is he worth it? This life you're living? Isabella thought of Luca that morning. Vulnerable in sleep. The armor of his position stripped away. She thought of his hands. Capable of such violence. Gentle when they touched her. She thought of the empire built on blood. And how he was trying, slowly, to wash some of it clean. He's worth everything, she said. The test came 6 months later. A new player had moved into the city, someone young and hungry who didn't respect the old rules. Bodies started dropping, not cleanly like Luca's organization handled things, but messy, public, designed to send a message. Isabella was at the penthouse when they brought Luca home bleeding. Gunshot wound to the shoulder. Another graze along his ribs. She didn't panic, didn't cry. She'd learned that tears were a luxury in moments like this. Get the doctor. She ordered one of the guards, already pressing towels to the wounds. And find out who did this. Isabella, Luca gritted out. You shouldn't. Shut up, she told him. Save your strength. The doctor came, patched him up, left instructions she memorized. Then came the waiting, the planning, the careful orchestration of revenge. Isabella sat in on meetings she would have run from a year ago, offering insights that surprised even Luca's oldest advisors. The girl has a point, Vincent said, after she'd outlined a strategy to draw out their enemies. He'd been coming around more often, watching her with something like respect. She thinks like one of us. No, Luca said firmly. She thinks better than us. Smarter, cleaner. The plan worked. Their enemies walked into the trap Isabella had helped design, and the threat was eliminated with minimal bloodshed. But something had shifted that night. The invisible waitress who'd once poured coffee unnoticed was gone. In her place stood a woman who commanded attention, who could walk into a room full of dangerous men and make them listen. "I've created a monster," Luca said one night, watching her coordinate with his lieutenants. "You didn't create anything," Isabella corrected. "You just gave me a reason to become who I was always meant to be." "And who is that?" She turned to him, and he saw it. Then the steel spine that had always been there, hidden beneath years of trying to be invisible. Someone who protects what's hers, and you, Luca Benedetti, are mine. The transformation was complete, but not in the way anyone expected. Isabella didn't become another Mafia princess, decorative and pampered. She became something far more dangerous, a partner, an equal, a force that even the old families learned to respect. "She's not what I expected," one of the other family heads admitted to Luca at a gathering. "She never is," Luca replied, watching Isabella across the room as she mediated a dispute between two of his captains. "That's what makes her perfect. Aren't you worried? A woman with that much influence over you?" Luca smiled, the expression softer than anyone outside his inner circle ever saw. "My uncle warned me she'd be my weakness. He was wrong. She's my strength." Later that night, as they stood on their balcony overlooking the city, Isabella leaned into his warmth. "Do you ever regret it, bringing me into this world? Do you regret entering it?" She thought of her small apartment, her simple life, the safety of being nobody special. Then she looked at the man beside her. This dangerous, complex, devoted man who'd shown her that being ignored wasn't the same as being safe. "Never," she said. "Then how could I regret giving you the choice? Even knowing what I'd become? Especially knowing what you'd become." He turned her to face him, hands framing her face. "You were never meant to be invisible, Isabella. You were meant to be seen, to be feared, to be loved. I just had the privilege of being the first to really look. And now? Now you're my dangerous obsession," he said, echoing the words Vincent had thrown at him months ago. "My beautiful, brilliant queen, who could probably run this empire better than I do." "I don't want your empire," Isabella said. "I just want you. You have me," he promised. "Forever, if you'll have me that long." She kissed him instead of answering. There on the balcony, where the city sprawled below them like a kingdom waiting to be claimed, the waitress who'd once been invisible now stood at the center of power, transformed not by the man who loved her but by her own choice to stop hiding. In the distance, church bells chimed midnight. A new day beginning, full of dangers and possibilities. Isabella Martinez, once ignored, now desired, smiled into the darkness. She'd found her place in this world of shadows and blood, and she'd carved it out with her own hands. The Mafia boss's dangerous obsession? Perhaps. But more importantly, she was his equal, his partner, his match in every way that mattered. And in a world where power was everything, that made her the most dangerous player of all.